Call the meeting to order. Oh. So going from our agenda. Grab multiple copies.
Yeah. Hey, June. Hey. Oh, we should do, I don't think the CAC has met you yet.
No,
So we'll, kind of take a little sidestep if that's okay. Jim, if you agree with that, just to introduce you.
sure.
Yeah.
Would you like to introduce yourself or have Travis do it?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm the new permit writer here at Rapa, and it's my second month here. And it's great to meet everybody.
Where you, so you want to tell a little bit about your choose from China, and you
I'm from
came,
China.
and yeah, your,
I came here for school. I went to California for my undergrad, and then I went to Baltimore for my grad school and I graduated last year. Here I am in Oregon.
Well, welcome.
so yeah, this is
Welcome.
kind of first job out of all of the education stuff, you say, go get your education and go find a job. And so we're happy he packed up his car or sold his car, packed up everything into a U-Haul and drove his life over here to Oregon.
Now you know my life story.
I feel like maybe not completely, but I'm glad you're here. Okay, so as far as agenda review here, we're public participation. I'll do the board meeting overview. We need to recommend or not Evelina's application for renewed membership. We need to elect chair and vice chair for 2024. And then we'll go back to our application form update. So public participation. Dana, are you wishing to comment?
Yeah, my name is Dana Corbin and I live in Elverdor. And I've lived in Oregon about 52 years and in Lane County about 30 years. So I'm just wanting to learn a little bit more about El Rapa.
Okay, well, thanks for your interest.
Well, welcome, Dana.
Thank you.
All right. So board meeting overview. Find my spot here. The board met on February 8th. Started with public comment from individual is concerned about the executive director selection process and concerned about undue industry influence. And then after that, there's an election for officers. Howard Saxion from Eugene is now the chair, and vice chair is the county commissioner, David Lovell. And those positions typically rotate through. There's some discussion of Title 47 changes with the open burning at Lowell. And where does that stand?
So the progress on the rulemaking for Title 47 is currently, it's out in public notice. So it's on our website that has the details to what those rule changes would be, which essentially is, there's a few new definitions in Title 47, like as an example, prior to this rule revision, burn barrels wasn't a defined thing in Title 47, but we prohibit burn barrels. So it's like, well, we should really define what it is to make that more of a clean sort of way to enforce that. And then the other change is Lowell at the moment does not allow outdoor burning between the months of basically November until spring burning begins March 1. They changed their city ordinance wanting to allow that to take place over the winter. From a Arapa's perspective, we do not believe that that change in allowing wintertime outdoor burning for Lowell would have any exceedance or issue with the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. So we were being responsive to them in changing our rules to align that. We had to get with the EPA and sort of complete this thing called a 110L demonstration of non-interference with the NACs, which basically is our math and our justification saying, well, if we make this rule change, we're not going to see any PM violation. And the EPA has reviewed that. Public comments are open. We have a public hearing that is scheduled at the March board meeting, which is March 14th. Following that public hearing, the public comment period closes. And if presumably the board will approve those rule changes and adopt them. And then the step from there is they have to go to the DEQ, to the Environmental Quality Commission, where the commission will review our rule changes and they also have to approve them. We have a meeting, we're on the EQC's agenda in May to give that presentation for the EQC to approve it. And if they do, then DEQ has to send those changes to EPA so they can be published in the Code of Federal Register, because Title 47 is called a SIP rulemaking or a SIP rule. So it essentially is a part of Oregon State Implementation Plan, which is how Oregon basically explains to the Environmental Protection Agency how Oregon will basically implement the Clean Air Act in the state. So the EPA has to concur with that change. And then once that's published in the Federal Register, which will probably be sometime later in 2024, maybe fall to late 2024. But once that is published, then we will have the ability to change the outdoor burning for goal. So that's kind of a short version of a lot of work to get there.
Well, thanks for that list, Professor. That was well described. Somewhat related, City of Springfield requested a variance regarding burn season because of the aftermath of ice storm and debris disposal. So there's quite a bit of discussion on that and what was legally possible. A variance, if granted, had to go to DEQ after 15 days, and DEQ could deny that. So what they ended up doing was an attorney, while the meeting was going on, prepared the variance motion. And so that was done, and they tied it to home wood heating as far as air quality goes. Let me know if I misstep anywhere here. So anyway, that passed. So there is a early beginning to burn season for ice storm debris in Springfield.
Yeah, so essentially what happened is we had the ice storm, which was very impactful in the Eugene, and Springfield area, but primarily in Springfield out to Thurston. And so the city of Springfield is concerned that all of the newly fallen trees later this year could become a fire hazard. And so they set up opportunities or ways for the public to dispose of these materials without burning it, such as a drop-off place where people can bring materials. Lane County also had some of those resources. But another thing that the city of Springfield wanted to offer was more flexibility for Springfield residents who already would normally have an ability to burn. So that means anybody within the Springfield city limits who has a property that is over a half acre, those groups of people in the Springfield area who can burn, typically in a normal year have to wait until March 1st. So the first variance to our rules that the city of Springfield requested of LRAPA's board to consider is allowing that outdoor burning to start sooner than March 1. And then the second variation on our rules, or variance on our rules, that the city of Springfield asked the board to consider is the prohibition of burning green wood. So essentially when a tree falls down or you have wood that was alive not too long ago, it still has high moisture content. And when you burn that wood with high moisture content, it creates more smoke than otherwise would be created if that wood was adequately dried. So because there's a need now to start to dispose of this wood and a worry that later this will become a fire hazard, the city of Springfield requested a variance on the rule to burn green wood. Both of those variances were approved by our board. They did provide a condition to it that essentially says that, or the outcome is, if LRAPA is monitoring, if we see on our monitoring out like Springfield City Hall, there's an effluometer out there, that air quality is dramatically impacted, then we essentially just close outdoor burning and say no outdoor burning today until the air quality improves. And they did attach it to the City of Springfield's emergency declaration, which at the time was only in effect until February 27th. But I believe it was middle of last week, they voted to extend that until April 1st. So the variance saying outdoor burning can start sooner, that's kind of irrelevant come April 1st because burning would already been open anyway. But that variance on the greenwood burning is still in effect through April 1st. And so that was the variance that the board considered. We sent it off to DEQ to do all the legal checks that we need to do to exercise our ability to do that.
Thank you. Okay, and then airmetrics, some of you folks may not be familiar with airmetrics. Many years ago, LRAP developed air testing equipment technology and spun it off as a business. And over time, the sales of that as a somewhat older technology began to decline. So the board at this meeting, after doing some exploration, agreed to sell the airmetrics business to another another business. And so that era of LRAP involvement in air testing is gone now. Budget committee meetings, they're at that point we're still had some open seats. So board members refer committee seats. And so they were looking to fill those because the budget meetings start in March. So there's sort of a extended period in March and April where the board has committee meetings and then the regular board meeting.
A note I'll offer real quick there, Jim, is so we did have the public participant who was at the last board meeting, heard the discussion about how there's seats open on the budget committee meeting. That individual reached out to me with interest in wanting to join the budget committee meeting. And historically or traditionally, LRAPA's process has been the board members themselves are responsible for identifying members and bringing those before the board to be considered to be appointed to the budget committee. After hearing this interest from this individual, I sent it to our interim director, Susanna, and she forwarded on to the now new chair, Howard Saxon, as the board chair. And Howard directed us to create on our website an application for budget committee. So the process still is that the board will identify individuals and then decide that they want to bring this individual to be considered to be appointed to the budget committee. But now we have a application on our website that wasn't present before that asks a few questions, budget related questions, describe your background and experience with budgets and things like that. So that way, any interested member of the public can fill out their materials, upload a resume that will be then sent out to the board members when those applications are received. And the board themselves as individuals can look at those application materials. And if that individual applying is within their jurisdiction, like City of Eugene, Springfield, wherever, they can then choose to reach out to that individual and invite them to potentially join the budget. So that's something that has happened between the last meeting and today, but something I felt was worth sharing out.
Yeah, thank you. That is a change to long practice. Let's see, the board had a budget forecast presentation and finance report. Some discussion on work session goals. Description of the new PM 2.5 National Ambient Air Quality Standards. Also notable was that there are no Title V permit renewals on backlog. So that caps the board meeting overview. So unless there are any questions, we'll move on. So the next thing on the agenda, Evelina, thank you, submitted her reapplication. So what we need to do is have a motion as far as forwarding that to the board with her recommendation to renew her membership. So
I would move to proceed to bring it
Okay.
to the board.
I'd second.
Any discussion? Okay. Oh, do we have a quorum? Let's see. Okay, good. I didn't do an account. So, all in favor to recommend Evelina's, renewed application?
I,
All right, so I see it's unanimous. Glad to have you, Evelina.
Yeah, thank you.
And on that note, I was looking at our committee
Thank you.
terms. Mine expires in April, so I need to renew. Yours expires in August.
Okay.
And is Paul with us today? No.
No.
We should send him a little notice that his expires in March, so he'll need to reapply. And Dana, if you decide you have an interest, we have a seat for general public open if you'd like to apply. All right, so now moving on to nominations for chair and vice chair. So let me just say, if anyone has an interest in being chair, I would happily pass the figurative gavel. My intent is to retire in about 2 years and move out of state. So I figure if I am reelected for this year, that would be my last term. Just cards on the table. So anyway, floor is open for nominations for both chair and vice chair. Kelly, do you want to indicate willingness or?
I am willing to stay on as vice, because I definitely have time to be a backup, but I would say, if anybody else is interested, then absolutely. If there are people who are interested in becoming the chair, it would be a good practice to become vice chair. So if anybody has interest in that in the future, I'm willing to let it go, but I'm willing to stay on. So.
Jim, do you want to talk a little bit about sort of what those?
Sure,
what
that's a
roles
good
look like for
idea.
you?
So as far as chair goes, in the bylaws, the chair is to communicate to the board of directors. And how that has usually happened is the chair attends the board meeting, gives a brief. The shorter it is, the more they like it. Gives a brief report on what happened the last meeting and sort of takes in whatever guidance the board may have as far as projects to work on. And other than that is setting the agenda and leading the meeting. And so you're all familiar with that aspect of it. And vice chair,
It's basically the
I forget, have you
backup.
stepped in the last?
I have
year?
not,
Oh,
only once, and
Oh,
it was
right.
to lead the meeting, but I was also unavailable for the board meeting at that point, because, but I led the meeting.
Okay.
I'll mention that we do all of our board meetings and even the CAC meetings, they get published onto YouTube. So there is a potential if someone was unable to attend the board meeting, they wouldn't be able to give a share out per se. Usually the public affairs manager steps in that regard of being like, here's what happened. But there is potential to see the video later on and get notes from it there to kind of do as Jim shared out. And also to that degree, staff who are here, so like myself, the director, they participate in the CAC meetings, but they also participate in the board meetings and are able to help bridge that as well. But the a presence at the board meetings is really kind of probably, I would say, the biggest like lift for that position or that chair is having the time and capacity to join our board meetings.
Yes. All right, well, with that said, the floor is open for nominations.
well, Jim and Kelly, you guys do an amazing job, and I hate to just like keep throwing your names back out. But I know personally I cannot do either one of those at that time. So I just want to recognize, you know, I don't want there to be inequity in the systems and you guys always get lumped with it, but I know personally you guys are doing a great job, and I've taken a temporary job up in Salem, which might turn into a whole year, might turn into the rest of my career. I don't know, but so I cannot. I can barely keep up getting back to this. So.
All right.
And if I do leave, I'll make sure I don't leave you guys in the lurch. We'll get a replacement, submitted for me, but.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So was that a nomination?
Yeah, well, no, because I didn't, out of respect, well, I mean, it could be right, but no, it's not yet out of respect for you know, everybody
Sure.
else may have input here.
Okay. Anyone else? So as typical, there's not a rush to throw your hat in the ring, and that's fine. So since Kelly and I have both indicated willingness,
Yes.
should we have a nomination?
I would so move.
And we need a second.
Second.
Peter Beach and Teresa. All right, any discussion?
Again, just thank you for your service.
Okay, all in favor of the motion? Okay, and yeah, so that's unanimous. Okay, good. Get that out of the way. Okay, well, gird your loins for a year from now. Somebody will need to step up. Okay, hey, so we're ready to go back to the application form. So did everyone get a chance to look at Travis's draft of the application changes?
I did. Do we want to share screen so we can go?
Yeah,
Would
are
that
we
be
able to
possible?
do that?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
And you just, if you pull up your email that you sent out earlier, Heather, you can just, on the browser, go to.
Well, I'm not logged in, dang it.
Oh, let's see,
Nice to meet you.
yes.
Okay.
Let me send, a Teams chat to you here real quick.
Okay, oh, perfect.
What teams are you on? Or-
I have no idea. Because I'm not logged, I mean, I think it's you.
Oh, it is me? Okay, I will send a Teams chat to myself. Oh, that's okay. And you can see that there, so you can share it. And let me, bear with us for a second as I pull that up. Okay, if you go to my chat, the one myself there that's pinned, the mat, you're gonna see a picture of yourself because
Oh, that's me.
that is you. So go ahead and click that though. I was getting Heather's
Our
ID
badges,
badge.
our ID.
Is that today?
Yeah.
Same shirt. Okay.
Yeah,
I just-
yeah.
I just took it. So once that opens up, then you can share your screen to Google
Whoops.
Chrome.
Oh, it came over this side for some reason. Okay. Whoops, share screen.
Oh, you have that right. Hit the X button there, and then instead of the little arrow, hit the actual green one. There you go.
There we go. And there it is.
Minimize, just minimize on your screen up here, like the actual screen we're looking at. Heather, minimize
Yeah.
that one. And then minimize that, the other one.
I minimize that.
And then just click
Where'd it
on the,
go?
it's the, right, yeah. And it's the one on the, which one of the two of them? I'm not sure.
Hallelujah.
Okay,
Okay, so can you guys see it?
I think they can. So the password was air quality, all lowercase with space.
No, I cannot see it.
Oh.
Let's see, go to the.
I
hit
can
the-
see-
Submit real
I
quick.
can see the home page, but I can't see what you're talking about.
Okay. what
It's
is
coming
that?
up.
Ah,
Hopefully.
Yeah, I'm gonna take control real quick.
Yeah,
Thanks.
come over. Thank you.
Okay.
Maybe I have too many things open.
I think we got it here. Oh, now it's like being frozen.
Great.
It's going.
Oh,
It's-
no.
It's just taking its time. Okay.
It was.
Oh, there it goes. I think it worked. Nice. Yay.
Okay, so now that should be seen by everyone.
Okay.
So is that working for folks?
Yes,
Okay, good. Okay, so name and address.
Yep, so you scroll down here through the first question. There's only, I don't think there's a ton of questions, but there's
Oh.
a few of them, yeah.
Should I give a little background for Dana?
Yeah, that could be helpful.
Hi, Dana. So
Hi.
one of the things that we're tasked with that we're working on are updating the application questions for people who want to be on the Citizens Advisory Committee. Just to give a little bit more depth to some of the questions. And preparation for when we get together for meetings, in the interview. So this is just a draft that we're looking at. It's not open to the public yet, and we're, just kind of, we're gonna go through them together to see what we think, so.
And these were, there's been some discussion on this, and so what I did following our last meeting is we had what seemed to be a pretty agreeable list of questions. So I took that pretty agreeable list, made a few changes based off the feedback I heard in the room. And then created this draft page that's behind a password until we're sure that this is what we want, and then we'll make it public. So I think there's about 7 questions here, that being the first.
Will it need to go to the board?
That's
Did
a
we already?
question.
I think probably just,
I don't necessarily know if that's something that's like board approval per se, like there's nothing in the bylaws that would say this is something the board needs to do.
yeah. I
When
agree.
we shared with them that we were reviewing the questions, I think that they would be interested to see them, to say that this is what the board or what the CAC agrees upon, or the new questions that we should be asking. I would think that taking an approach of, this is what the CAC is intending to do, FYI, and give the board opportunity to decide if they want to provide some feedback or not, might be the best
Okay.
approach there.
Maybe just give them access to the draft as we
Yeah.
have had if we agree to present it. So, okay, so question 1, I'm not seeing the Zoom people on screen, so just go ahead and speak up if you want to say anything.
Could you actually scroll up? Is there any like introduction to these questions?
Yeah, very at the top, there's if you keep going up, so there's a brief description of the CAC itself.
Okay.
Kind of the role.
Oh, and it gives the process, that's good.
And then, so there's community segments that we try to have at least one person for each seat. We have a couple open seats where we don't have someone present at the moment, but then it goes through the different community segments of the CAC's effort to have a well-rounded perspective on the CAC. So all of those different groups and categories. And then once you get through those community section descriptions, then it's the actual application itself.
I guess I'm wondering if we want to have some sort of sentence that's like, we encourage everyone to apply. The like lack of experience on advisory committees or in a regulatory work is not necessarily a detriment. If you have any questions, contact or something encouraging people to apply if they have an interest, since some of the questions read as kind of technical to me.
That's
Like
a
your
good
level.
That is a good
observation.
idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or would we want to put a note at the end of some of those questions that seem to be giving the impression that technical expertise is important, and some sort of disclaimer?
I like the idea of the introduction sentence, but let's read through them and see if we think that it's too technical.
There is an option with each of these questions where you can provide a little bit of description where it sort of describes like the intent to it. But yeah, I would agree with Teresa's suggestion that setting some expectations or removing expectations that people may have themselves, that they're like, oh, I'm certainly not qualified to be on that, like, don't want to put up barriers that don't exist, so.
Yeah, well, I guess my only thought is that if there's an introductory sentence, that might be easy to miss, whereas if it's in the question itself, you're going to see it for sure.
Peter has his hand up.
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, above the questions in the introductory paragraph at the very top of the page, under advisory committee application, when it first starts out up there. Yeah,
Yes.
that first paragraph, towards the end of that paragraph, it says, vote to recommend the board of directors appoint the applicant to the committee. Maybe it would be better to say vote to recommend vote to forward a recommendation to the board of directors, period. Just so that we vote to forward a recommendation. It doesn't say whether we're recommending the applicant be appointed or not. This to me reads a little bit like, it says recommend the board of directors appoint the applicant to the committee, that it's kind of a, kind of an, assumed endorsement that we would be recommending they be appointed.
It is though, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that is what it is, but I don't know, I kind of like your wording, Peter. It seems a little more.
I think it's a concise way to describe it in the sense that the process is it's almost like the CAC is sort of the first stop, so to speak, but any applicant has an interview with the CAC. The CAC is able to ask questions, like what's your reason for being here? What's your interest? What's your passion for being on a part of this group? And then if the CAC agrees that this is a good application that the board should consider appointing, then that passes that gate and then moves on to the next one, which is the actual voting to appoint. So it's kind of really, I guess it wouldn't necessarily, to Peter's point, be the CAC is recommending that the board consider this person. Rather, it's the CAC agrees that the board should consider this person. So it's kind of, and if the CAC would not necessarily recommend that person, then I would think that they would not want to forward the application on.
Okay,
Well, I think we're obligated to forward it, even if we don't recommend, which is what happened not that long ago.
Oh, that is true, yes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
Forward, yeah. They could play forwards a bit. Who would even know?
Did you get his suggested
Yep.
wording?
Yep, vote to forward recommendation to the board of directors.
Does that seem to cover it?
Yeah, forward application to the board of directors.
Yes, yeah, that we're forwarding a recommendation, not that it's, it's kind of, we're not saying ahead of time whether we are, it's a little bit of a fine wording, but I'm just thinking about the situation we had a few months ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any more thoughts on that? Okay,
Go back to the first question.
so the first question, which should be the primary focus of an advisory committee in influencing environmental policy?
And there's a message in the chat just popped up too.
Oh, great.
Thank you. She's working on it.
So Dana commented that she has input about more effective hybrid in-person Zoom meetings.
I didn't mean this to, interrupt what you're doing right now. But I would like
Okay.
to speak to somebody about that at some point.
Yeah, for sure. We can hang out after the meeting if you'd like.
Okay,
Okay.
All right, thanks. Okay, how's the consensus on the first question?
Is there a way to see
Yeah.
people and like,
Yeah,
split
if
screen?
you, Heather, if you on that one that's up there in the top right,
Mhm.
click on the second one to the right. One more over to the right, that one.
Hey, all right,
Okay.
now we can see at least most of you. Maybe can you arrow down a bit and get? Okay. All right, are we good with the first question? Chris's thumbs up, everyone's nodding. Okay, second question, what motivates you to join the advisory committee and what unique contributions do you envision making? Whoops, I like that.
Like this.
Anybody have comments on that one?
Good.
You have to kind of control shift eight.
Oh,
to
to get my
that.
controllers back.
Yes. And then should be able to find them. There you go. Oh,
This won't go away. There we go.
Okay,
I would leave it though, Heather. Yeah.
all right, so, sorry, we had a little issue with getting the video back.
Yeah, any recommended changes to this second question?
Okay. What's next? Describe your level of familiarity, including specific areas of expertise or interest. Yeah, and this is where, to Teresa's point, I think it's good to either have that introductory comment or embed something in the,
So we
I
can,
think you can even
Question.
take out rules and programs and just say what's your level of familiarity with a wrap up,
yeah,
including any, and then it takes away some of the, right?
I like that.
Maybe?
How do we feel about
What do you
that?
think about that, Teresa? Make it a little bit less formal, just what you're familiar with, like a wrap up? Okay. Chris, Evelina, does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, and we don't
Yeah,
have
that's
Peter
perfect.
on,
Okay.
we don't have Peter's video.
Okay, well, maybe I can double click it and make it bigger, but otherwise I can scroll up.
click on the checkerboard.
And
that
Peter's
might-
getting us
it
with
might show
thumbs
us
up.
a little bit more, but
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
I think we're still limited in all the people we can see though.
And then you can't really see the questions, but.
Yeah.
That's all
Yeah, I'm
good.
good. I'm good with taking those words out.
Okay,
Okay,
perfect.
are you actively involved in any other advisory boards or committees, and describe the role?
So what was the impetus behind asking that question? I can't remember if we've talked about that already.
The advisory board or committee one?
Yeah, the fourth one you just read. Yeah.
Yeah. I think just to get a sense of if they've worked in a similar kind of setting before.
It's might be semantics, but it's almost, I don't want people thinking, I don't know, right? I mean, you just read that like, oh gosh, what are they driving at something particular, right? Or looking, or thinking, does that question lead to, in someone's mind, a conflict of interest? Or I just couldn't remember if we'd ever discussed.
Yeah,
I think it had to do with just experience in this type of setting before. We talked about scheduling a little bit, whether or not Robert's rules was brought up. Just kind
Gotcha.
of getting an idea if people have participated in similar type, right? I think.
I think you're right in terms of like arriving at this was a sense of there's a certain process and order by which we meet. You know, we loosely follow Robert's rules of order. And I think that was designed to kind of get at that, trying to judge if there's familiarity though with engaging in that way. And so what thought that I have on potentially modifying that question, which might not necessarily hit that potential need, Kelly, but instead of saying, are you actively involved in any other advisory boards or committees? It's instead just being like, do you volunteer for any other board, committee, or organization? Because I mean, what you are doing here is a volunteer effort. And so saying, do you already volunteer on other advisory boards, committees, or with organizations gets more of are you volunteering? But also at the same time could still hit a little bit of that advisory board sort of, are you familiar with this? That's a potential suggestion.
and even if it's not current service, we'd be interested in past
Yeah.
experience.
Well, this is one
That's
that
what
is
I
one-
was gonna say.
Go
Sorry.
ahead, Evelina.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. It sounds like currently as of right now, but what about previous experience? So I would have to agree. Maybe verb it differently. Have you been previously or currently involved?
Do you have any experience with other advisory boards or committees?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And I'm not personally 100% hung up on it one way or the other. I really wanted to respect Teresa's input earlier about, right, just I want to make sure we don't run anybody off.
Yeah, absolutely. We
Wanna be-
want to be a big
Want to be
tent here.
inclusive. That's all. I just want to be
Well,
inclusive.
She has her.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Teresa.
Oh, I was just gonna say to the point that's been brought up, this question asks about being actively involved. So I feel like if our goal is to have people's experience with committees and groups, it sounds like we're asking for people's experience working with groups, in particular formal committees. I feel like I usually phrase things like, please describe your experience. Like, please describe your experience working with advisory committees or other volunteer groups or something like that.
I like that.
I like that. You know, this is one that's one of the existing questions.
Yeah,
Right?
it
You
was.
remember, and like, again,
Well-
we've kind of figured it was in there for a reason, whether it was like conflict of interest, conflict of time, being spread too thin, like, we were kind of guessing at why it was in there, and felt like, again, you don't wanna like take out like,
Well,
yeah.
here's
Like, I
the,
like that, I like the rewording of that.
here's the original question is briefly describe your present or past involvement in relevant community groups. Please note that having no previous involvement will not disqualify you for appointment.
Maybe we just like that phrasing and we can kind of take the old and put it back in there.
Go back to it, right?
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Okay,
I just like the notion. I mean, I just don't want somebody to, obviously we want people to participate, and I don't want to disqualify somebody just because they got scared reading the question. That's all.
And
yeah, absolutely.
as the way this question is phrased, like if someone was like, yeah, I'm involved or was involved with my local neighborhood association, I think that's super valid and like applicable. But I don't know, at least in the wording of that, if someone's brain might automatically jump to like, oh yeah, we totally have a neighborhood association and we meet and we like, engage and find about stuff.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
Ready to move on to the next one then? What specific factors or aspects do you think are most important to consider when assessing how well a rep is doing its job? Any thoughts?
it feels more formal than what we had come up with in the meeting, but I don't have the original questions. I think it was, oh, thank you.
It's a little deep, but I like it.
Yeah, I wonder if it could be tweaked just a little, like. Are there factors or aspects that you think?
Yeah, not this
Well,
one,
yeah.
my original, email.
oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that was sent in October, I think it was.
It was like, how would you gauge if LRAP is doing well, or it was something just, I felt like a little bit less formal, but. Any thoughts on that, you guys? You guys have any suggestions how to soften it a bit? Or do you like it the way it is?
I think maybe we should leave. At least give the impression that they have permission to skip that one if they feel like they're not familiar enough with LRAP to skip.
So essentially take off the required answer.
Yeah, and in the wording, kind of at least make it look like it's okay. To say I don't have an opinion yet.
I'm almost swinging with leaving it as, so I, just 5 minutes ago, I'm like, oh, let's not be too constrictive. And now, but but then again, we do want people to be concerned with what we're doing and,
Yeah.
why we're participating. So now I kind of feel like the pendulum, I'm swinging the other way.
Well, I could be convinced.
I can acquiesce to the groups. I'm okay with it, but I can acquiesce to the groups to conscious.
I'll put out a thought just for people to think about or consider, but in terms of like improvement, you really want to like set some form of matrix, right? If you're wanting to judge performance and improvement of that performance, you need to kind of have some metrics that you're setting, that you're holding yourself accountable and tracking.
Right.
And so this question is kind of gets at that a little bit, not to imply that individual or that the CAC is the one to set those metrics, but I do think that an important part of the CAC is opportunity for the public to have more direct connection with like the director of the agency and management with the agency to make sure that feedback is being heard by the leaders of the organization. And so I think that this question, it can be insightful into how they would engage in that relationship. I don't necessarily know with how it's worded is like worded the best it can be to really like give insight into that. But I do think a big value of the CAC is the direct line of communication with leadership here and some insight into how that individual thinks LRAPA should be, what metrics LRAPA should be using to judge if it's successful or not, has merit.
Well, I found the original question, but it's not much different, because when reviewing LRAPA performance, what metrics do you find the most useful?
And
So,
Yeah, I like this version
yeah, I
better
like
than
this
that
version
one.
better too.
I don't know, any other thoughts? Do we want to leave it? Are we all ambivalent?
I know what I'm thinking. I mean, I guess to me, it's almost, you know, kind of want to peer into the inner, you know, lift off the lid and look into what's important to the applicant, right? And so it's
Yeah.
like, what aspects do you consider most important? And so it almost leads to me like we're running down one road, and then all of a sudden, then we switch back over to LRAPA doing their job well. It's like almost two different. The first part of the question to me, like almost is, hey, you know, we wanting to know about the applicant. What are your drivers, right? What are your big rocks? What are important to you? And then I don't know, it almost like to me like it takes a U-turn right at the end about, then it ties it back into LRAPA specifically. And for me, I'm more interested, I just want to get to know the applicant. We'll get to know the person, you know, what are their drivers? So it's almost two parts. And again, I'm just being, I actually usually don't talk very much. And today I'm kind of dominating the conversation, but that's what I see out of it. It's almost two questions in there, but
But we are asking them what's important to them
right.
in this question.
And I guess maybe I'm getting tripped up on how well LRAP is doing its job. And it's like, well, gosh, I don't, you know, if you're coming as an applicant, potential applicant for the Citizens Advisory Committee, it's like, gosh, do I know all the ins and outs? Again, it's almost.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm articulating myself very well.
No, I see where you're coming from myself.
I guess I want to know, I guess I would, if I'm coming to you as an applicant, it's like, you know, is LRAP, are we being responsive to the public's needs? You know, are we disseminating information well, But I don't necessarily, so those are things, no matter what the organization is, I would like to know, you know, those are important to me that any organization I'm participating with are doing these things, right? Being responsive to the public, you know, getting a diverse, you know, input, but I don't necessarily know the specifics of that organization X, Y, or Z. And so it's the job, maybe it's just the word job. Are they doing their job well? I know what's important to me, aside from what actually the specifics might be to this particular.
Yeah, I think, Chris, one of the ways that we could kind of address that is by restructuring how the question is asked. And so instead leading with LRAPA, so it's sort of like, how should LRAPA or what specific what specific factors or aspects should LRAPA consider in determining if it's doing its job? So it's kind of like, you know, because the question is, what are the metrics that LRAPA should be looking at in its consideration of how well it is doing a good job or how poorly it may be doing a job? So the question to the applicant is essentially, what metric should LRAPA be using in determining how well it's doing its job? That's much wordier, but I think kind of leading with LRAPA in that question of like, how should LRAPA judge how well it's doing its job?
Is part of the question something like part of the role of this committee is to review performance on how well LRAPA is doing its job? What metrics would be important to you in assessing that? Because I feel like it's kind of missing a piece around why we're asking the applicant this question.
Say that again though, Teresa, what part of
Like,
this
part
committee's
of the
job?
role of the Citizen Advisory Committee is, I guess, assuming this is true, and my apologies for not knowing this, like, part of the role of this committee
Right there with you.
is reviewing performance reports or reviewing data around how well LRAPA is doing its job or whatever it is. What would you like to see? What would help you do that? What would be important to you in fulfilling that role of this committee? But if that's in no way part of the role of this committee, then I think we should probably remove this question. And I'll say that, like, my guidance from HR has been to limit especially written screening questions to 2 questions, to not inadvertently screen people out, like recognizing that it probably varies how much time people spend on questions like this, but somebody could reasonably spend like several hours working on essay questions.
Yeah, we
And
don't want it to be
people might not want
daunting.
to do that.
But
Yeah.
these aren't just screening questions. We've said that these are gonna be the interview questions, because we're not gonna have separate questions. So this is, right? We said they're
Yeah,
gonna,
we're
they're,
gonna expand on these.
Yeah.
Well, you can use the word briefly describe and
Yeah.
maybe not focus on specific.
I guess I had a
So
couple
much.
different thoughts on this, because one of the things that I thought, that we're just trying to make sure that there aren't any personal agendas coming in. That people have an issue with some specific thing that LRAP is not doing, and like using this as like, right, as a conduit to try to set some agenda or to get things changed, which we don't do. And so I think it was just part of like, how do you evaluate, like, when you're looking at LRAPA and like how they're, engaging with the community and those types of things, how do we evaluate that they're, I don't know,
Yeah.
meeting expectations, I guess. I'm not sure.
How many more questions do we have?
A few. Yeah, maybe we
Yeah.
just get rid of that one.
Well, what we could do is remove it, but have it as one of the questions we say ahead of time. This, we had talked before the interview, providing a list of questions, that could be a set item in the list of questions, and then we could
Yeah.
have more back and forth on it.
And you guys are trying to be gracious to my opinion. It could be that I simply read too much into it and it's completely okay, just for the record.
No, this kind of
Not-
diversity of takes is good. So we are getting towards the end, and I'm wondering about doing a second draft and just leave the 2 we haven't talked about be, and then hopefully get through the whole thing next time.
So what we can do is, we have a few notes here, so I'll just kind of go through them briefly. So adding a short sentence, but a sentence early up at the beginning that essentially is adding we encourage anybody to apply regardless of, background or technical skill or merit. Modifying to Peter's suggestion, the vote to forward the application onto the board. In one of the questions, we had rules and programs that we wanted to remove to just be more LRAPA specific, like what do you know about LRAPA? And then looking at that question of have you previously or actively, are you on any advisories, changing that more to be language that's more broadly encompassing of any group, and modifying the questions so that way it's not active, but it's any experience. And then we're still have these questions here. So those would be the changes that we could make to this same thing, and then kind of pick up where we leave off on the next meeting, if the CAC is agreeable to that.
Okay, Peter has his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, I was talking about forwarding our advisory committee recommendation to the board, not forwarding the application to the board.
That's a forwarding recommendation, yeah.
Okay, so let's leave that there for now. So we'll get a second draft and then maybe wrap it up in March. Okay. Roundtable. Peter, do you have anything to bring up?
No, but I thought I'd explain my my avatar here, my
Okay. I did wonder about it.
yeah, it's a heat pump water heater, and it says Energy Guide $115 per year, which is the estimated cost for heat water and a 50-gallon water heater for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, which is about half of what a typical non-heat pump water heater would cost. And also that EWEB has $800 rebates on these units, which start at about $1,200. So in my opinion, they're probably the most cost-effective way and largest impact a person could do to reduce carbon emissions, because you save about 2 tons of carbon emissions in addition to the saving money on heating your water. So that explains that.
All right.
Yeah, I'll just bounce off that for Peter. So one of the things that ARAPA is doing is we're working collaboratively with Lane County, City of Eugene, Springfield, LTD, not Elcog as of yet, University of Oregon, all to try to understand where we collaboratively can go after funding opportunities for climate reduction grants or money to fund climate pollution reduction projects. One of the things that we're considering is wanting to do as a project is mapping out all of those resources and incentives, like Peter pointed out there, and hopefully finding some funding for a concierge type sort of approach to where individuals in Lane County can more easily be connected with resources such as you had your windows redone. Oh, did you know that there's a wheat rebate? Or, oh, you're wanting to get a water pump installed. Did you know that EWEB has this program and some funding, and making those things more easily findable for folks in Lane County. So we are collaboratively participating in those talks to try to come up with more resources that would be helpful in those things so we can reduce greenhouse gases in more sectors than just what we're focused in.
Okay. Teresa, anything for roundtable? No? Chris?
From I guess the lens of the wildfire community, fire season's coming, and I look at the National Drought Monitor, where we're at, we are way better than we were last year. That's great news, because Eastern Lane County, Lynn County, right in the bullseye of drought for some odd reason. So it's gone from like being, I don't have it pulled up right now, but from like a severity level to moderate, I think, or so still in drought, according to the National Drought Monitor, but much better than we were last year. Looking at the rain totals out at the Malin Suite, we are just behind normal. So I think 25.74 inches for the rain year to date, and we should be at about 26.5, so around an inch below, but that's way better than it's been in recent years. Nuance to that, it's interesting watching that historical. I've gone back and looked at the data where they keep a 20-year data set, which is a great site. I could share that if anybody was interested, but it's out of the National Weather Service in Portland. But it's that the average has gone down significantly. So it looks like we're about average right now, but this average isn't what it was 20 years ago. It's a little nuance to that. I don't know where the scale slides within their data set, but so
those, I know a little bit of that, Chris. So they base climatology on 30 years average, and then they update those about every 10 years.
Okay. Yeah. So, right. So if you're just a layperson, you're looking at it, it's like, oh, hey, we're about average, but the average is, 12 inches, a year less than it was 20 years ago. So obviously, something significant is happening to our climate. It's just kind of nuance if you didn't know it. And so that's some fire season stuff. And then, yeah, nothing locally, but I think, along with climate, along with fuel loading, DEQ, or at least at the Oregon level, I think DEQ, Department of Forestry, Forest Service, we're looking at some large scale, larger than normal in the 1,000-acre range, some fuels mitigation work over in Bend, which again, doesn't have anything to do with ARAPA, but it may have a nexus eventually, right, as we try to figure out what we can do to the fuel loading and the fire out of the ecosystem for the last 120 years at an appreciable level, et cetera, et cetera. So there may be a nexus eventually back to this group, but there are some exciting things, I think, on the horizon. Something needs to be done through my professional lens. Anyway, so that's, I guess, my update for now.
Thank you.
Yep.
Evelina?
Well, thank you all for considering my reapplication. And I was hoping you'd practice your interview questions on me today. But you
we may have to put somebody in the hot seat to practice on once we get our questions down. Okay, Kelly, do you have any?
No updates today.
All right, and then you've heard enough from me, so, okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Dana was gonna say she had some questions.
Sure, we're happy to chat with you further, Dana, no worries.
Hey, Dana, did you have some questions?
Comments?
Yeah, I was just, I was, wondering if it's possible that, that the members who are not on camera, except on the, you know, as a group, if they all have either a smartphone or a pad or a laptop, that, so that one could see their photo, see their picture, and see who it is that is actually talking.
Oh, you
Um,
mean, so in terms of like, for those who are participating online to more fully see the faces and individuals who are in the room. Because we're here in person versus virtually. And it's harder to see that in the room, who's talking and when, and their specific face and expression. Is that what you're getting at?
Yes, if I saw you on the street, I would not recognize you from having met with you during this committee meeting, because your image, even when I pin your photo, it's still so small I can't make out very much about what people look like. And you would just have to have a device. It could be a phone. It could be a laptop. It could be, any other kind of an iPad type device. And you would just turn the sound off. You would tune in like we do, like people do on Zoom, but you would turn off the sound and just have the picture on, and then we could actually see who's talking and get a picture of them.
Got it.
So
That's
anyway,
something-
I just thought that would, for me anyway, that would make it ever so much better.
Okay,
It's worth considering. Yeah.
A lot of people turn their cameras off though.
Yeah.
So
What's that?
Yeah.
I appreciate our group that's leaving cameras on, because I do think it's important to kind of Dana's point, seeing people's eye contact, their body language more directly is better and more helpful for communication. And over a virtual setting, those cues are harder to pick up on, and so having that more readily available. I would say that I think Dana trying to facilitate everybody having a device or a phone and getting those things logged in could really create some technical cumbersome that would diminish how productive we can be. But I can say that what we can do is so we have a camera here in the room that can adjust, they can zoom in, they can be modified. And so prioritizing our assessment of how well that camera zoomed in, how clearly we appear on the camera, I think taking steps in that direction could be a way to better get at your need of being able to see our faces and our expressions and our nonverbal communication cues that's harder to pick up on in a virtual setting. So I think that that's an effort that we can pay forward more so than we have.
Are you saying that the people who are there in the meeting in person don't have the that they don't want to be on Zoom?
I would say that going through the technical hoops of having everybody log in with their phone and create some setting where they can see themselves, and then trying to assure from a technical perspective that everybody online is able to equally engage in that way would be challenging and burdensome to do. And we also have our in-person component that is available. So anybody who is virtually who would prefer to be here and join us in person, including members of the public like yourself, that is an option that's available. We have a remodel project that the organization is about to go through that will change our board meeting room, because this is our break room as well as our meeting room. And so the remodel will successfully, once done, create a more appropriate space where there's better public access to getting into the room as well, to increase opportunity for the public to more meaningfully engage in that way as well. So To that end, I do think that anybody who wants to be here and participate in person, even as just a member of the public, is certainly free and welcome to do so.
I
think,
I assumed that that was correct, that that you could go in person, but you know, to me, it's like a drive into town, so.
Sure.
yeah, I think one possible kind of halfway or compromise on that would be, and this may be exactly what Dan is talking about, is say you four that are in the room there now, if you were to sign into the Zoom meeting with your phone and have your picture be what comes up on Zoom and just leave that running, you wouldn't, I mean, your phone could be in your briefcase or in your wallet or whatever, and it would just give a closer picture of that to the people who are online of who you are. It wouldn't show expressions, it wouldn't show you moving, it would just be a static picture. I don't know if that's getting to what Dana's talking about or not.
Well, that would certainly be an improvement, but why would you not want to have the phone in front of you?
So we're all angled to look at a big screen, so you
You're all
can't, it
what?
wouldn't actually, we're all angled to look at the screen. We're not sitting with a laptop in front of us, so having the camera, like trying to position things could also, it wouldn't quite accomplish. So I'm looking this way, to have it on the table would be facing kind of a different way, but you know.
Oh,
we
so
can
what are you seeing on the big screen?
all of you.
Everything you're seeing.
Well, so if you were on Zoom, you would be seeing all of us as well. And we would be seeing all of you.
Yeah, I guess, Dana, we heard your feedback, and this is something that we can make as a discussion for the next board or the next CAC meeting to consider. And I would just say from my perspective here as a public affairs manager, I do feel that the approach that you're suggesting would eat into what's already a single hour limited amount of time to get to engage and have meaningful discussions. And that would detract from that. And I do think that in the current setting, our hybrid approach is appropriate and acceptable. And I also think that we can do more in terms of how the camera is zoomed in, so that way you can more fully see our faces and can make the commitment to you that we will take those steps moving forward on future CAC meetings and board meetings. So that way the public can have more access to the faces and the expressions and their body language during these meetings, because that is important. And even those who are participating virtually, being able to be to see those things and be a part of those communication cues are important. And I think that that's a real good middle ground that we can take on that issue.
Thank you for your consideration. I appreciate it.
All right,
Bye.
thank you.
Okay.